Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The result's legitimate only if the president wins.
The president will accept the results of a free and fair election. He will accept the will of the American people.
So for clarity, if he loses and it's free and fair, he will accept.
I've answered your question. He will accept the results of a free and fair election.
Free and fair, according to whom? Well, in this case, according to Donald J. Trump, who, if you actually look at his record, has already said the answer to the question. He has clearly said that the election is not free and fair if he is not the victor.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that.
It'll end up being a rigged election.
The Democrats are trying to rig this election because it's the only way they're going to win.
Okay, so he's saying there's no way he can lose unless the election is rigged. So Kayleigh McEnany's point is farcical, right? If he'll accept the results of a free and fair election, he's already made that clear. He said he won't accept them unless he wins. But what will he do, if he loses? Well, let's go and check the tape.
Will you commit here today for a peaceful transferal of power after the election? There has been rioting in Louisville. There's been rioting in many cities across this country, red and your so-called red and blue states. Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see.
I mean, again, get rid of the ballots and you'll have a peaceful, there won't be a transfer, right? Again, if he wins, he accepts it. And to those out there, and I'm sure there are plenty of you who say, come on, don't take him literally on this. He's just stoking the flames. Well, if that's you, or if you are Republican Senator Mike Braun of Indiana, who today told Politico, quote, Trump stokes the fire sometimes. If you took it seriously, it would be alarming. And I don't think that's the case. Well, Senator Braun, just listen to Trump's supporters who are right now at his rally in Jacksonville, Florida. They are taking Trump seriously. Here are two. Our Boris Sanchez just went, for the purposes of what we're laying out here, to ask them, what do they think? Here is what they told him.
Do you think that if we get to election night or in the following days, if Biden winds up somehow becoming the winner, do you think it's rigged?
Oh, yes. Very much so.
What are the chances, do you think, that this election might be rigged?
I'll tell you, with the mail-in ballots we don't like, I'll tell you, there's a lot of cheating that's been exposed, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. See, our president brought this to our attention. See, this stuff was going on that nobody really knew about, and it just happened and happened and happened.
Election night,
yes.
Days after, if it shows up that Joe Biden won,
yes.
In your opinion, would that be the only way that Trump could lose, that it'd be a rigged election? Is that the only way Joe Biden can win?
Absolutely. I agree with that. Because there's no way in heck our president's going to lose. But yes, it would be a rigged election. There's some type of cheating went on, what have you. And I firmly believe that.
I wanted to play that whole exchange because that last gentleman there says the president brought all of this to his attention. Yes, they take the president seriously. They believe him. They think if he loses, it's rigged. So I guess I just have to be clear again that there is no evidence now of fraud, of rigging, none. And by the way, I guess one of the best people to listen to on that might be President Trump's own FBI director, Chris Wray. He spoke about it today. Here's what he said.
Americans must have confidence in our voting system and our election infrastructure. And now, we have not seen historically any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise.
And yet, Trump's ardent supporters listen to him. And yes, they take him seriously. So yes, Senator Braun, it is alarming. Caitlin Collins is out front live outside the White House. And Caitlin, the president is making sure his supporters question mail-in ballots. And you just heard two of them there that believe that if Biden wins, it's rigged.
Yeah, and that's part of a months-long effort by the president, Aaron, to sow doubt about the outcome of the election. So what he said yesterday was provocative, and he repeated it, of course, again today, as you noted. But it is not new. It is part of this pattern of the president eventually working his way up to this comment where he will not commit to a peaceful transition of power if it comes to that. And today he was saying the reason he won't is because he's not sure that the results of the election can be legitimate and can be honest, was the word he used when he was asked, would you actually accept the results of the election if it's determined to be legitimate? That is not repeating what his press secretary told reporters earlier today. As you showed, she said that if it's a free and fair election, the president will accept the results. That's not what he said when he was pressed by reporters for a second time today on his comments from yesterday. So, of course, it is calling into question what does the president view as a free and fair election? And we know that in the past he said if Joe Biden wins, it means the election was rigged. So he is setting himself up for this showdown that clearly, as you saw play out on Capitol Hill today, Republicans don't want to deal with, because you saw them criticizing what the president had said without naming him. And the Senate went so far as to pass a resolution reaffirming their commitment to a peaceful transition of power because the Constitution mandates it. Now, this comes on a day when we had this unusual announcement from the Justice Department saying that they had found, as part of this investigation, 9 discarded ballots, which they now say 7 which were marked for President Trump. 2, they do not know who they were for because those ballots are sealed, saying they were discarded. It's not really clear where they were discarded, Aaron, but we should note the Justice Department had to correct their statement because after they initially issued it, it said 9 ballots were for Trump, and then they said, actually, we only know that 7 were for him, 2 we don't know. Reminder, this is all in Pennsylvania. 6 million people voted in Pennsylvania in 2016, but it is notable that the Justice Department is going so far to put some statement out like this on their investigation, even though it was only 9 ballots.
It is Friday, the 25th of September of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oh my, we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, each with their own personal French 77. Yes, in the virtual world, we can do that. If you have a favorite cocktail that you'd like to imbibe, alcoholic or non, please go ahead. It's virtual. You can do anything you want. Alrighty. If you were to imbibe in the French 77 in the analog world, please do not drink more than 2. In fact, 2 might be too much. 3, well, it's, let's just say it's the most well-balanced cocktail in the world that will throw you out of balance if you've imbibed too much. Indeed. Okay. Well, the world goes on. It's a weekend, which means that there's going to be even more news, more outrage that will get over by Monday because there'll be even more new outrages. They keep coming hard and fast, and they will continue to be coming hard and fast as we approach the election, which is not very long from now. In fact, it's right now. People are voting right now. So, remember all those years that we kept saying we want paper ballots? because we want a paper trail. These damn voting machines don't have a paper trail. So when you think that your vote was like flipped right there on the screen, you couldn't prove it. There was no paper trail. That was by design, of course. And everybody wanted paper because you can, basically back up the proof of what the actual vote was with the paper. And now Trump wants to get rid of paper because then everybody will know what the truth is. Of course, and he's got the DOJ backing him up, Bill Barr. John Mitchell, this mofo, right now. I know that Nancy and the rest of the leadership, now I don't want to get mad at Nancy. She's been navigating us pretty damn well. I mean, best vote counter ever in the history of the House. They may be keeping their powder dry, but maybe expressing your hope on CNN, MSNBC, or wherever that the goodwill of the Republicans will prevail in this time of turmoil. Give me a break. She can't be serious. Not when there's compromat or actual cash in the pockets of each of these GOP repugs. I know that's a bit redundant, but still. They are Vichy collaborators all, and the reason for it is because they're dirty. Vlad has dirtied them up. This is not some sort of conspiracy theory. It is a fact about a conspiracy. People go to jail all the time for criminal conspiracies, please. It's not a theory about the Russian mob being involved with Trump. That's a fact. Verifiable by the paper, by the way. The paper trail. First, he was all upset. Judges. Who ever heard about judges? Got to get rid of judges. Now it's ballots. I mean, these ballots. If we didn't have these ballots, it wouldn't be a transition. It would be a continuation. You mean a continuation like Vlad got? Is that what you're hoping for, Donnie? This is not the former Soviet Russia going through the throes of becoming a new government with capitalism and all the freedom that one would want in a burgeoning democratic society. You know, we've got some years under our belt trying to make it work. You know, forming a more perfect union because it's not perfect. And we've gone through quite a bit, right down to killing workers because, well, you know, they're only cogs. Why are they telling us what to do? We went through that. We know what it is to be a democracy. Of course, I suppose maybe not. A lot of us are dying off. Who remembers World War II? Young kids apparently are unaware that 6 million Jews died because of the Holocaust. Well, I never heard of that. Really? I wonder why. They didn't teach that in your home school. Yeah, mommy and daddy maybe didn't want you to know for a reason. So we have cult members potentially nominated to go to the Supreme Court. Because, you know, it's all a means to an end to bring the kingdom of God on earth. You know what? I'm sorry, the kingdom of God is already here. If God is omnipresent, does it really matter what we do? I mean, come on. As far as I know, God is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. We're puny by comparison. What the hell are you talking about? We got to bring the kingdom of God here. God and his kingdom, her kingdom, its kingdom, whatever, is already here. All right? Doesn't matter what we do. Doesn't matter what we say. We will not be destroying the earth. The earth will destroy us. It will continue. Yeah, existence doesn't stop because we do. Existence will continue, like a continuation. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? Well, Trump voters do prove that we should not dismiss his election threats as folly or a joke. They are serious, and they have guns, too, and they'll let you know it. They always do. On the rest of the menu, the first citation Iowa regulators issued to a meatpacking plant for a huge and deadly coronavirus outbreak was a whopping $957. Boy, that's going to put them under. I don't know how they'll ever recover financially from that. Conservation groups slammed the Forest Service's proposal to exempt Alaska's Tongass National Forest from the Roadless Rule. Yeah, you need roads to go in there and, denude the whole forest. Can't do it without the roads. And Florida prosecutors dropped charges against Trump confidante and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft after courts ruled video showing him paying for massage parlor sex would be prejudicial. Well, I thought that was the whole point. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the United Nations urged member states to help the more than 300,000 merchant marines stranded at sea because of the pandemic, some for over a year. And Germany will replace its intelligence boss in an effort to do more to root out right-wing extremists from the military. Well, maybe they have a model that we can do it here. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Though she be still very busy with the census, they haven't stopped it yet, and they better not stop it until it's done. All right? Please. This is America. Thank you, Kelly, for all that you do. If you would then take a look to the leftish of the page from that chat room link that's at the bottom, or really near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the link to our Patreon page. And of course, it is called Patreon, so you could become a Patreon of Netroots Radio if you could afford a espresso type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month. We have experience in stretching those dollars. Others have done it as well. And look, we need more shoestrings to make this shoestring operation operate on a shoestring. One's not enough, please. Anyway, we are forever grateful to those who have been so generous to send us those funds that we can stretch beyond compare so that we can pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting as the founders originally intended, so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that and so much more. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And you know what? I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. So it's easy to get to Daily Kos if you just go to my Twitter handle at Justice Putnam, and I'll have the show notes and links diary there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can at Cookbook West, and most importantly, do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Ryan J. Foley. Iowa regulators have issued their first citation to a meatpacking plant with a large coronavirus outbreak that sickened its workforce. A $957 fine for a minor record-keeping violation. Yeah, you didn't keep the records proper. Those workers sick? Come on, they're cogs. The outbreak at the Iowa Premium Beef Plant in Tama, or is it Tama, in April resulted in 338 of the plant's 850 workers testing positive for the virus, 80 more than the state previously acknowledged because they fudged their little bookkeeping error there. Okay. The Iowa Occupational Safety and Health Administration said on June 1st that it had launched an inspection at the Tama plant and 4 other meatpacking plants where thousands of workers had tested positive. Records show that the inspections did not lead to any citations at the other 4 plants where at least 9 workers died because their records were just kept up to date. And those included Tyson plants in Waterloo, Columbus Junction and Perry, and the JBS plant in Marshalltown. The agency cited Iowa Premium Beef in August for failing to keep a required log of workplace-related injuries and illnesses and for failing to provide the document within 4 hours after inspectors requested it. Both violations were labeled other than serious because sickening your workforce or killing them is just the cost of doing business. And the business is not hiring workers and keeping them healthy. The business is working your workers until they drop. Becky Borer of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The U.S. Forest Service is proposing to exempt the country's largest national forest from a ban on timber harvest and road building in roadless areas, a move conservation groups denounced. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, which the Forest Service follows, announced yesterday, Thursday, the upcoming release of a final environmental review, identifying a preferred alternative to exempt the Tongass National Forest from the so-called Roadless Rule. Once the review is released, at least 30 days must pass before a final decision is made. And when they say final, they mean like putting a knee to the throat until it can't breathe anymore. The Tongass, which covers more than 25,000 square miles in southeast Alaska, is one of the largest relatively intact temperate rainforests in the world, and a majority of the Tongass is in natural condition, unlike most other national forests, the Forest Service has said. So why not? Come on, why does it have to be so special, huh? Why can't it be as equal as the other national forests? Why? The state in 2018, under then Governor Bill Walker, asked the federal government to consider the exemption, and members of Alaska's congressional delegation last fall lauded a draft proposal that listed an exemption as a preferred alternative. Supporters of the exemption see it as increasing access to federal lands for such things as timber harvest and development of minerals and energy projects. Critics say it could adversely affect wildlife, contribute to climate change, and hurt tourism and recreation opportunities. Randy Spivak, Public Lands Director at the Center for Biological Diversity, in a statement, said the federal proposal would pour gasoline on the inferno of climate change. These towering ancient trees take enormous amounts of carbon out of the air, and we need them now more than ever. We'll do everything possible to keep these magnificent giants standing for centuries to come. The U.S. Department of Agriculture said 9.2 million acres, or about 55% of the forest, currently is designated as roadless areas. Kate Glover, an attorney for Earth Justice, said her organization has long defended the Tongass as part of litigation, and we will use every tool available to continue defending this majestic and irreplaceable national forest. Also of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Florida prosecutors dropped a misdemeanor charge against New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft after courts blocked the use of video that shows him paying for massage parlor sex. Oh, that would be prejudicial, you say? Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg said during an online press conference that without the video recordings of Kraft, age 79, and 24 other men paying for sex at the Orchids of Asia Day Spa, well, there just wasn't enough evidence to convict them. We are ethically compelled to drop all cases, he said. Well, I guess that Kraft money goes a long way. He's got a lot of cheese. Kraft's attorney declined immediate comment. He could still face suspension or other punishment from the National Football League because their investigators are pretty thorough. A lot more thorough than, sometimes our own feds, especially in this case. And this isn't a federal case, this is a state case, of course. So let's get back to that. Well, apparently more thorough than the investigators for the state of Florida. And I got to tell you, they punish you a lot harder. Apparently. Kraft's attorneys, the National Football League did not respond to a request for comment. And, of course, the Patriots declined to comment because who's going to say anything against the boss? Shortly after being charged, Kraft issued an apology for his actions. Oh, I bet he asked for hopes and prayers now, didn't he? Ehrenberg said that even though the charges were dropped against the spa's customers, the felony cases against its owner and manager will proceed using evidence such as bank records. Yeah, let the Johns go. He said no one should doubt what occurred there. He said rich men from a local country club lined up to purchase sex at the spa, which was in a suburban shopping center near a supermarket, restaurants, and other businesses. Oh my, you mean where children might be frequenting? The Orchids of Asia Day Spa was a notorious brothel in a family shopping center right next to a game room that attracted children, he said. I knew it would come up. Although we cannot prove human trafficking beyond a reasonable doubt, there was evidence of human trafficking. in the overall investigation. The attorney for owner Hua Zhang was surprised to learn of Ehrenberg's decision to proceed against her client, saying prosecutors told the judge they needed the recordings for the case to stand. Well, that's the difference between an Asian lady and a bunch of rich white men now, isn't it? Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Charlie and the Thoughtless Factory. After years of television writing, Charlie Kaufman broke onto the big screen with 1999's indie earthquake, Being John Malkovich, directed by Spike Jonze. After Malkovich, Kaufman wrote additional unique screenplays, usually examining some tortured man's psyche. There was Adaptation, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Yeah, those were all Kaufman. All directed by other people. However, now Kaufman directs his own work, such as his recent release, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Starring Jesse Plemons, Jesse Buckley, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis, all giving the level of performance that I imagine you get into movies to be able to do. I'm Thinking of Ending Things follows a young woman, Buckley, as she and her new boyfriend travel to a secluded farm for her first meeting with his parents. At the same time, our young woman is thinking of ending the relationship. There's a lot to talk about with this film, but if it's not too late, I don't want to deprive you of the experience that I had going in very clean. I'll give you this advice, though. Give the movie some time. It's a slow burn. After the intro, you have an excruciatingly strange 20-minute car ride scene before it dawns on you that this film is not another relationship drama. What is it? I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a densely layered, quietly surreal little puzzle that slowly and deftly unfolds like the love child of Beckett, Pinter Hitchcock, and people I'm not educated enough to cite. Now, frequently such movies captivate you so much with the mystery of how they tell their story that they can hide the fact that they don't really have much to say. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a wildly odd and complex ride that's anchored on Kaufman's thesis that life is hard and wearisome, and you often don't get what you want. Is that simple theme strong enough to be that anchor? Does the movie give us insight into it? Good questions, but let's talk after you've seen the film, and you probably want to see it more than once. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Charles Darwin is most famous for his finches, from whose beaks he gleaned the idea that a single species might radiate into many. But he studied other attributes of birds, too, like the rhythmic sounds some species made during courtship by fluttering, shaking, or rattling their feathers together.
Since Darwin, there has been this fact that birds produce sounds with wings and tails or flight feathers. So there are species of manakins that do these sounds, and there's hummingbirds that do the sounds.
Valentina Gomez-Baumon is an evolutionary biologist and ornithologist at the Field Museum in Chicago. She and her team have now observed that non-vocal sound production phenomenon in another type of bird, the fork-tailed flycatcher. The researchers studied two groups of the birds in South America and recorded the birds making these fluttering sounds with their wings during morning courtship rituals and in combat between males. One of the two flycatcher subspecies is migratory, the other stays put. And by carefully measuring the bird's feathers, the research team found that the migratory birds had longer, thinner feathers, presumably for some aerodynamic advantage. But that altered feather shape also meant the bird's fluttering produced a different frequency. Compare the migratory bird's flutter to the stationary bird's.
So basically what we think is that because of loss of migration, pressures for flight may influence the shape of the individual feathers to the point where the sound quality changes as well.
The details are in the journal Integrative and Comparative Biology. Gomez Baumon says they're still not certain what role the sounds play in day-to-day flycatcher life, if the birds do indeed even pay attention to them. But she suspects the sounds may have some cultural importance to the birds, in which case, she says, the communication differences between the migratory and non-migratory birds could further divide the two types of birds, or in other words, give rise to the origin of species. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Does the United States inflict forced sterilizations on detained immigrant women?
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Because of a whistleblower complaint, a gynecologist working for the United States immigration agencies has been linked to allegations of performing unwanted hysterectomies on detained immigrant women. Andrew Free, an immigration and civil rights attorney who is investigating medical treatment of women at the rural Irwin County, Georgia detention facility, said the indication is there's a systemic lack of truly informed consent that could ultimately result in sterilization. The ACLU has filed a Freedom of Information Act request to uncover the details of the claim. Under these circumstances, the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security must conduct an investigation and must report his findings immediately. The allegations, in the context of the United States' history of sterilizing the most powerless people in society, demands no less. In the 20th century, 33 states had forced sterilization programs, and the Supreme Court, 8-1, okayed forced sterilization laws in its notorious 1927 decision, Buck v. Bell, and 70,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized. And even though Buck v. Bell has never been explicitly overruled by the High Court, we thought we had escaped that horrific history.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1961. That was the day when Herbert Lee was murdered just outside of Liberty, Mississippi. He was a successful black cotton farmer who became active in efforts to register black voters. Lee had 9 children. He was one of the few area black farmers with a vehicle. This made him very valuable to the voter registration movement. Lee would drive Bob Moses from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee around Amet County to reach unregistered voters. It was dangerous work to register black sharecroppers and farmers in rural Mississippi. Attempts by black residents to gain legal or economic equality were met with threats and violence. On the morning of his murder, Lee had come to the Westbrook Cotton Gin just outside of Liberty to drop off a truckload of cotton. There, he was met by a childhood friend, Mississippi State Representative E.H. Hurst. Hurst came up to the truck and started shouting at Lee. Then he took out a gun and shot Herbert Lee in the head. Witnesses stated that Lee had brandished a tire iron at Hurst. Hurst claimed self-defense. A jury declared the murder was justifiable homicide. Lewis Allen, a black farmer and timber worker, was one who had testified about witnessing the shooting. Later, he recanted his testimony, saying that he had lied about Lee threatening Hurst because he feared for his life. After Allen began to talk about what he actually saw that day, he became the victim of harassment and beatings. Finally, on January 31st, 1964, he too was gunned down in his driveway. No one was ever convicted or even arrested for his murder. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Thousands showed up Thursday to pay their respects to the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They filed past her casket, which was displayed Wednesday and Thursday at the top of the steps of the Supreme Court. Trump and his wife visited on Thursday, but people in the crowd booed and heckled him. Wearing a mask, Trump looked away as the chants grew louder. Then he walked back into the building. On Friday, Ginsburg makes history again as the first woman to lie in state at the Capitol. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is among the many calling on his Attorney General Daniel Cameron to release the evidence from the Breonna Taylor case after announcing that the 3 police officers who killed her would not be charged. A grand jury decided to indict former Louisville police officer Brett Hankinson, the only one charged, for firing recklessly and endangering lives in a neighboring apartment, but not for firing the shots that hit and killed Breonna Taylor, a black emergency medical worker. The 3 officers broke down Taylor's door 6 months ago while executing a search warrant, then opened fire when her boyfriend fired his gun, thinking intruders were breaking in. Protests broke out in Louisville and other cities across the country after the announcement that none of the officers were being charged with Taylor's death. Another day, another asinine comment out of his mouth.
You have to be very careful with the ballots. The ballots, that's a whole big scam. You know, they found, I understand, 8 ballots in a waste paper basket in some location. They found, it was reported in one of the newspapers that they found a lot of ballots in a river. They throw them out if they have the name Trump on it, I guess, but they had ballots. No names on them. Okay, well, they still found them in a river, whether they had a name on it or not. But the other ones had the Trump name on it, and they were thrown into a waste paper basket. We want to make sure the election is honest, and I'm not sure that it can be. I don't know that it can be with this whole situation. Unsolicited ballots. They're unsolicited, millions being sent to everybody, and we'll see. But if you remember, Hillary Clinton just a week ago or so told Joe Biden, do not accept the results of the election under any circumstances. But you don't ask her that question. You only ask me the question.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said Trump would accept the results of a free and fair election. without ever telling us who gets to make that judgment call. Trump faced bipartisan backlash over his comments. The Senate unanimously approved a resolution reaffirming its commitment to a peaceful transition. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, testified before Congress on Thursday that there was no evidence that mail-in balloting, which is expected to be widespread due to coronavirus, will result in fraud.
Now, we have not seen historically any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise.
But following Trump's lead, Republicans at state and local levels are taking concrete steps that could potentially eat away at the integrity of the election. Those steps include making it more difficult for voters to cast ballots, more difficult for states to count votes, and more likely that tallies will be challenged in the courts. The efforts threaten to undermine the public's confidence in the outcome, regardless of who's declared the winner. So my question is, when does the UN send its election monitors here? Obviously, America has a lot that needs fixing. Reuters reporting Thursday that House Democrats are preparing to introduce a bill next week seeking to limit Supreme Court justices to 18-year terms instead of their current lifetime appointments. Under the bill, justices' terms would rotate so that 2 would be appointed every 4-year presidential term. Only new justices would be limited to 18 years. Current justices would continue to serve their lifetime appointments. Well, score one for the good guys. A federal judge ruled Friday morning that the 2020 census count must continue until October 31st, as originally scheduled, barring the Trump administration from ending the count a month early. Judge Lucy Koh of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California also barred officials from delivering completed population data to the White House on December 31st instead of the previously planned April 2021 delivery date. Koh found that the administration's shortened schedule for completing the count was likely to distort the figures on people of color, immigrants, and other historically undercounted groups, resulting in a potentially unfair redistribution of House seats based on the count. The ruling came after evidence filed this week indicated that Census Bureau officials believed that cutting off the counting early would hurt accuracy. So, please participate. If you didn't get a census questionnaire in the mail or just can't find it, please go online and fill it out at 2020census.gov. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, thank you, fall. We are expecting temperatures to be nearly the same as yesterday, around 70 to 72. Partly cloudy this morning with a few showers developing during the day. Highs are once again around 70 to 72. Winds out of the southwest. And showers this evening becoming less numerous. Expecting almost a quarter of an inch between today and overnight. And winds will be out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Lows in the mid-50s. Highs tomorrow in the mid-70s with cloudy skies early, becoming partly cloudy later in the day. Small chance of rain. Winds will be light and variable. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon is now at 1,109, with a confirmed deceased standing at 4. Once again, I remind folks that the deceased is quite an undercount because they're not counting people who have died from things like, respiratory problems they had before they had COVID. But somehow the COVID and the respiratory problems before don't. A pre-existing condition. You're not covered. Well, when those numbers are actually tabulated in their correct form, because let's be clear, not all of Oregon is Democratic. No. Lots of it has disinformation. Indeed. Well, right now, ragweed pollen is high right outside the window of the mothership here in Rogue River proper. And the air quality index, though, for the region is still good at 23 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is a moderate level for fall at 5. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.04 inches. Visibility, though, is at 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. They have their P-tape. I have mine. London right now. Oh, let me get London up here. Oh, here they are. London. 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 55 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 75 degrees and partly cloudy with lots of wind. Kyiv is 77 and fair. Kabul is 73 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 68 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 53 degrees, clear with lots of wind. San Francisco, California is 58 and mostly cloudy. And New York is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and fair as a fair New York can be. How fair is that? And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Angela Charlton of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Another COVID-19 problem that the UN is trying to solve. How to help more than 300,000 merchant mariners who are trapped at sea because of coronavirus restrictions. Despite the mounting desperation of seafarers who have been afloat for a year or more, Captain Hedimasugi pleaded their case yesterday at a meeting with shipping executives and government officials on the sidelines of this week's UN General Assembly. As the pandemic washed over the world and made shipping crews unwelcome in many ports, he said, "We received very limited information and it became increasingly difficult to get vital supplies and technical support. Nations change regulations on a daily, if not hourly, basis," he continued. Several months later, many borders remain closed and flights are rare, complicating efforts to bring replacement crews in for those stuck at sea and forcing their employers to keep extending their contracts. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres joined shipping companies, trade unions, and maritime organizations in urging governments to recognize merchant crews as essential workers and allow them to travel more freely. With more than 80% of global trade by volume transported by sea, the world's 2 million merchant seafarers play a vital role. Merchant ship crews are used to long stretches away from home, but as virus infections and restrictions spread earlier this year, anxiety mounted along with the uncertainty, Maguzzi said. Not knowing when or if we would be returning home put severe mental strain on my crew and myself, he said. We felt like second-class citizens with no input or control over our lives. Well, when you're at sea, it's not a democracy. That's what they always say. Maritime officials from Panama, the Philippines, Canada, France, and Kenya defended steps they have taken individually to allow safe crew changes or otherwise ease the crisis. But officials lamented a lack of international coordination among nations and shipping companies, calling for new rules to protect countries from the virus while respecting the rights of stranded crews.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Germany's defense minister will replace the head of the military intelligence agency. Her ministry said yesterday, Thursday, a move indicating she wants to do more to root out right-wing radicals from the armed forces. The Military Intelligence Agency Chief Christoph Gramm had begun reforms to combat right-wing extremism in the military and achieved noticeable improvements, the ministry said in a statement, because they're polite. But then they added, however, that further progress was needed and this required more effort in a veiled dig, apparently. This new phase should also be made visible in terms of personnel, the statement said, though they didn't say that. It was much more grammatical because they weren't messing up the recitation of it. By mutual consent, Graham is to be relieved of his duties next month and will take early retirement, the defense ministry said, adding that a successor would be chosen soon. Several incidents in the last few months have raised concerns about the influence of the far right in the military, an especially sensitive subject for Germans given the country's Nazi past. In June, Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer said she would disband a company in the military's elite KSK Special Forces due to a persistent problem of far-right extremism within the ranks. A KSK captain had asked the minister to intervene after he accused instructors and senior commandos in the unit of cultivating a toxic culture of acceptance under which complaints about far-right influence were suppressed. In May, police seized weapons, explosives, and ammunition during a raid on the private property of a KSK soldier in the eastern state of Saxony. As part of the crackdown, KSK operations are being moved to other units. Oh, good. Now let's do the U.S. military. How about our police forces as well? Okay, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, and you do know we will broadcast on here at Netroots Radio, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.